Kings, of course, are believed to have divine rights, until enough people get upset about it. This is currently known as Place de la Concorde, originally built as Place Louis XV for Louis XV, then renamed Place de Revolution, and it was here that Louis XVI, along with thousands of others, was beheaded by the guillotine in 1793. Where does the concept of divine rights come from? The whole idea is nonsense, of course, but here's how it comes about in simplest terms. Primitive man couldn't answer questions such as what caused the tides, the sun to shine, storms, and so on. Where were you before you were born, and what happens after you die? Perhaps your consciousness has a spirit that becomes a ghost and floats around. So he theorized that there must be another dimension, a superior spirit world inhabited by gods who are in charge of these earthly things. Perhaps there is one God in charge of all the others and all the spirits that live there. What made him think this? Perhaps the village idiot, the simpleton who stumbles around mumbling incoherently to himself and says he is seeing ghosts, really isn't a simpleton at all, but really is seeing ghosts. Perhaps the simpleton has some connection to this spirit world. Perhaps he can see things the rest of us can't see, and perhaps he can communicate with the gods, or the one god, or whatever. The beliefs almost always include some idea of an afterlife that is either a better place, a heaven, or a worse place, a hell. After all, who wants to see their enemies in heaven? Of course, only the souls of good people go to heaven when they die, and the bad ones go to hell, so that we, the good people, don't have to put up with them any longer. Makes a good story, right? And we can see this whenever we look at a primitive culture. People all over the world believe in witches and demons, gods, ghosts and devils, witchcraft, black magic. Still today we can find the tribal witch doctor or holy man who puts on a scary mask, shakes his rattles, makes potions from old bones. Perhaps the silliest superstition of them all, kissing the blind stone. Which one? This one here? Yeah. Double, double, toil and trouble, fire burn and cauldron bubble, fillet of a fenny snake, in the cauldron boil and bake, eye of newt and toe of frog, wool of bat and tongue of dog, adder's fork and blind worm's sting, lizard's leg and howlet's wing, for a charm of powerful trouble, like a hell broth boil and bubble. That's from Shakespeare's Macbeth that he wrote in 1605, performed in the Globe Theatre in London, much like this recreation of it here. Now what happens when you accept all this sort of mysticism? You have to do it on faith, which means you have to accept these ideas in the absence of reason and in defiance of logic. This part is fascinating, so take your time with it. There are only two ways one man can deal with another: by logical persuasion, as I am doing now, or by bashing him over the head, caveman style. That is, by reason or by force. And here's the key to all history. To the degree a civilization accepts ideas on faith, that is the degree to which they must reject reason. And to the degree they reject reason, that is the degree to which they must resort to force in their dealings with others. Faith and force are nearly always found together. We can see that all through history, coercion has been the primary means for one individual or group to deal with another. If one tribe has something such as food or animal skins, a nice piece of land, or attractive women, steal from them. History consists primarily of battles and wars. How does it work? The strongest men sharpen their spears, make slingshots and stockpile stones, and go into battle with a rival tribe. The biggest, strongest, and most experienced man generally becomes the leader, and before long he is recognized as the chief of the tribe. His henchmen become his soldiers. The bigger the tribe, the larger the army he controls. Along with stealing from other tribes and defending his tribe from them, he usually discovers that he can bully the members of his own tribe too. He can intimidate them into providing himself and his soldiers with food and entertainment and so on. If they don't comply, his soldiers will beat them up. After all, that's what they do best. Often this doesn't end well, because occasionally some smart member of the tribe questions the chief's authority. Why do I have to submit to this guy? He makes all the rules that I have to obey, and he will punish me if I disobey. What's so special about him? Why does he get to extract wealth from me? What is the most common justification? He was chosen by the gods. Now he can tell everyone that, but it works best if someone else does it. Someone with some mystical aura, like the village idiot, but a bit smarter. A shaman. The chief is thinking, if the tribe will believe that the village idiot has access to the spirit world, then it shouldn't be too difficult to get the shaman to pass the word around that the most powerful god has told him that the chief has been chosen to be their leader. And the message from the shaman is typically, you'd better believe it, or you know where your soul is going to end up. And of course, if the shaman doesn't perform well, the chief discredits him or has him killed and finds a new shaman. Hence divine rights, rights supposedly handed out by the divine or supernatural entity in charge of the spirit world. The chief's authority is not to be questioned, and he has been given the power of life and death over others. The chief and the shaman coordinate their efforts, and they put on fancy robes and headdresses, carry special sticks, and give themselves fancy titles, to make themselves official. To further keep the population in line, the priests of the South Pacific Islanders developed something called the tapu or taboo system, which meant that whatever the priest touched became forbidden. Touch it and you die. The chief, or even the priest himself, would kill you for disobedience, and sometimes they would kill a tribe member at random, just as a reminder to everyone else of their power. So these two men, the men of faith and force, depend upon each other, and this was fascinating to me when I first understood it. The priest has the hotline to the gods, so he keeps the population believing, out of fear of punishment and eternal damnation in the next world, that the chief is in power. And the chief keeps everyone in fear of physical punishment in this world. Everyone has to bow to them because they control your mind no matter where it happens to be, and your body while you have it in this world. These two make the laws, so of course they keep themselves above the law. There is no one else around who can hold them accountable for all their brutality. It might just be the world's oldest scam. These are the ruins of Tintagel, the legendary birthplace of King Arthur, who inherited the kingdom from his father, Uther Pendragon. The legends are full of superstition. Sorcerers and their magic, sword in the stone, that sort of thing. This is Merlin's cave. Assuming the legends are true, this is Arthur being crowned by the Archbishop Dubricius, with the bishops of the other nearby provinces around him. Now you might think that this barbaric practice, this fraud, would have faded away centuries ago. But no, it continues to this day and has been embellished with elaborate titles, costumes, jewels, thrones, coronations, and other rituals. France and England, where my ancestors have come from, have a long history of kings and queens, lords and dukes and earls and barons, and of various religious officials, of course, and the inevitable battles for power among them. It helps if you come from a long line of royalty. All you need to do is claim that you have blue blood and you're in. Everyone accepts you as the next heir. Many kings and queens are often thought to be practically gods themselves. They really aren't, They're just people like everyone else. Actually, royal families tend towards inbreeding so as not to dilute that blue blood, and this sometimes results in, well, I'll leave that for the viewer to investigate. Even though the men of faith and force depend upon each other to maintain their positions of power, things don't always go smoothly. They fight amongst themselves. Henry VIII and Cardinal Wolsey had a good relationship, and both acquired tremendous wealth until the struggle for power became too much. This is the Archbishop of Canterbury crowning King George VI. There have been 105 English archbishops so far. He's the one who places the crown on each new king or queen's head at the coronation. Thomas Becket is a familiar name. He was Archbishop of Canterbury from 1162 until his murder in 1170 by followers of King Henry II. You can find examples of these two in practically every society. Even Napoleon, who first crowned his wife Josephine and then crowned himself, took those crowns from Pope Pius VII. You can see the Pope seated behind Napoleon in this famous painting. Not only do these two men depend upon each other, but they also have a stranglehold on each other. If the priest or pope or archbishop doesn't like the king, he can pass the word around that the king is up to no good and God has withdrawn his sanction. For that, or because the population is starving, they revolt and oust the king, as was done in France. America had to have a war of independence in order to free themselves from the King of England. If the king doesn't like the priest or the pope or whatever he is called, the king has him killed or jailed, or he declares a new religion, as Henry VIII did, and he ushers in a new group of religious officials. History has been dominated by these two characters in one form or another, and the whole scam revolves around a belief in divine rights. This is Castle Cornet on the island of Guernsey. The French and the English have been fighting over this island for centuries. This is St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin, and it's just full of war memorials from all of the different battles among the various religions. This is the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, which for centuries has been suffering from religious wars. Protestants versus Catholics. This is Belfast, Northern Ireland, a place that has had almost endless religious conflicts. This is King Robert the Bruce and Stirling Castle. Many battles were fought between the English and the Scottish. These are the Mayflower Steps, where the Pilgrims left Plymouth, England, in their search for freedom from religious persecution. What I hope you got from this video is that the concept of divine rights is totally incompatible with inalienable rights, the logical principle that I explained in the first video, the right of every individual to act according to his judgment because his very survival depends upon it. It's long past time to consign the myth of divine rights to the rubbish heap.